look up anything you own and try to find its label, specifically where it was made. It's easy if you can look at the back of your shirt, and often it'll say, made in the USA, or hecho en Mexico, or made wherever. It's a little bit trickier sometimes if it's some kind of electronic thing or whatever else it might be. But can you find out where it was made? Now, I used to do this with my seminary students, and they'd check each other's shirt collars, or they'd look at different things and go, oh, this was made in somewhere, and we'd cover the earth geographically. And then I'd say, okay, look at it a second time with spiritual eyes. And this time I want you to find out again, where was this made? And there's only two choices. If you look closely at the stitching, maybe you'll be able to detect and discern, was this made in Zion or was it made in Babylon? At the end of a movie, it'll often it'll tell you where it was filmed. Well, watch a movie and pay close attention. Was this filmed in Zion or was this produced by Babylon Studios? Chances are, by the way, you won't have to wait till the closing credits. It'll become clearer earlier on. Well, I used to do this with my students, and it led to fascinating conversations. And I don't just mean it has to be produced in Salt Lake City. It's not just church. There are Zion industries all across the earth from so many different religious organizations and other organizations, people trying to do good things. That's made in Zion too. But I'll put it this way, I think it's important for us to come to discern what's the source of what we wear, what we watch, what we learn, what we consume. Am I turning to God or am I turning to the world? With that in mind, if you look at section 78, verse 3, notice this passage. Verily I say unto you, the time has come and is now at hand, and behold, and lo, it must needs be that there be an organization of my people, in regulating and establishing, and then here you have to pause. In the text that we have in our edition of the scriptures, we're supposed to regulate and establish this, the affairs of the storehouse for the poor of my people, both in this place and in the land of Zion. So both in Kirtland and in Missouri, we need bishop storehouses in both places. If we're going to have poor in both spots, we better have ways to provide for them. That's good. But that's not the original language of the Revelation. It was much more specific then. And once that time of specificity ended, the language needed to become more universal. And the idea of a bishop storehouse providing for the poor, that's more universal than the original was. What was the original? Let me read it this way. There needs to be an organization of my people in regulating and establishing, here's the news, mercantile and publishing establishments of my people. You need to have them here in Kirtland, you need to have them there in Zion. Oh, so it's not about bishop storehouses quite yet. It's much more specific. We need mercantile establishments and we need publishing establishments. We need ZCMI and the Deseret News if you're in the Utah period. We need the bishops of the church to create mercantile establishments, and we need people like W.W. Phelps to create publishing establishments. We need to get the products out, and we need to get the message out. Interesting. Because if you think about it, what do we buy, and who do we buy it from? Are those things made in Zion or Babylon? Or this one, what do we read and whose words are we reading? And since unfortunately many people live in a post-reading age, what do we watch and who are we watching? Because honestly, what we learn often determines how we live. Right? So if you think about consumer culture in terms of products and services, but also consumer culture in terms of ideology and what we're learning and how we're deciding to live, what we own ends up owning us. And what we learn determines how we live. And that being the case, we've got to be careful about source. Is this sourced in Zion or sourced in Babylon? Where is it coming from? Tell me where you shop, and I know some things about you. Tell me your news outlets, and I can guess some things about you. You understand what I'm saying here? And as the church is trying to establish Zion in Kirtland and in Missouri, the world was still too much with them. And so the Lord was trying to wean them off the world so that they could establish their own sources, their own media outlets, their own publishing companies, their own mercantile establishments. You understand? Think about, speaking of labels, imagine an organic label. If you see that on the label, you can make some assumptions. You understand some things about how that product was grown or made. If you were to see a label that said no artificial flavors or colors, it's like, oh, okay, this is more natural. That's more healthy. Okay, that's good. Well, imagine on everything you consume if it said no artificial philosophies or concepts. Oh, that's kind of helpful. How good am I at discerning what I'm eating, what I'm consuming, what I'm reading, what I'm becoming? Talk about a storehouse for the poor. Talk about a place where we know we can come and safely shop. You understand what I'm getting at? I really hope this is becoming applicable. Why do we need these things? Look at verse 4 and 5 of section 78. It's for a permanent and everlasting establishment and order unto my church. And here's why you need it: to advance the cause which ye have espoused, to the salvation of man, there's horizontal, and to the glory of your Father who is in heaven, that's vertical, that you may be equal in the bonds of heavenly things, yea, and earthly things also, for the obtaining of heavenly things. Well, that sounds like Zion. Equal, one heart, one mind. So what cause are we trying to establish? The cause of Zion, the cause of Christ. And if we can really become one heart, one mind, dwelling in righteousness, no poor among us. Why? Because we're providing for one another. Through mercantile establishments, through publishing establishments, through the bishop's storehouse to provide for the needs of the poor. This is for God's glory and for humanity's sake. Living the first great commandment, loving God. Living the second great commandment, loving neighbor. And providing them with the things God has provided to us. That's what we're trying to accomplish with our made in Zion mentality. If you look at verse 14 and 15, notice how this concept, how the Lord describes this concept here. That through my providence, I'm the one offering it. I'm the ultimate source. Everything made in Zion should be made by God. But through my providence, notwithstanding the tribulation which shall descend upon you. So that's, prepare yourself for that. That the church may stand independent above all other creatures beneath the celestial world. That you may come up unto the crown prepared for you, and be made rulers over many kingdoms, saith the Lord God, the Holy One of Zion. Zion, one heart, one mind. Here's the Lord, the Holy One of Zion, trying to help us come up to the crown prepared for us. Sounds like there's two crowns up there. One's a crown of thorns. There's the tribulation he warned us about. And one is the crown of glory. Yes, those two crowns always seem to come in pairs. And honestly, the crown of thorns will descend by gravity alone. If you live the gospel, yeah, you're going to go through some hard things. But it's by living the gospel that it's not gravity pulling the other crown down. It's godliness lifting us up to it. Yes, tribulation will descend, but godliness will bring you up and exalt you on high. The Lord is calling us up. He's calling us to leave the worldly influences that drag us down. We need to be independent above, not just independent of. You understand? This is a fascinating concept. And if we can learn to live independently above the world, not to look down on our neighbors, but to reach down to lift them to higher levels of living, that's Zion. But in order to be independent, we have to ask ourselves, how much of what we're buying comes from Babylon? And how much of what we're learning comes from a university that is not celestially accredited? Can I put it that way? If we can ponder the things that we buy, the things that we read, the things that we look at and want to look like, if we are what we eat, if we live as we've learned, then maybe it's our own label we need to analyze. Have I been built by Babylon? Or am I made in Zion? That's the question.